We don't talk about them SoDs much these days, I know, but today something happened. As you guys know, the grind for the Ashbringer is pretty long and arduous in SoD, and as you can see, it has 117 DPS, a bunch of stat, a proc that gives you even more stats, 2% expertise on top of that. It is the most broken weapon in the game. So after doing a quest that takes a lot of time and costs a lot of money, it just so happens that warriors that were a pretty mediocre class before the Ashbringer have shot up all the way to the top almost overnight, because a lot of people are getting their Ashbringer at the same time. And if we go to the DPS rankings, now Season of Discovery is completely dominated by warriors. There was pretty much no warriors in the top 100 before the Ashbringer, and the second that the Ashbringer became available, it just so happens that it is really freaking broken. You can see down at the 90s, you can see other classes, but pretty much all the way to like the top 30, 20, something like that, it is all warriors. And some red paladins, which are obviously also using the Ashbringer, like this guy, Johnny J. What's up, homie? So this goes to two questions, right? Did they tune the warrior around? They would eventually get the Ashbringer, so they didn't tune them very strong because they knew that they would be broken later? Or was the Ashbringer a lot more powerful than they expected and the warriors took full advantage of that? Because as you guys know, red paladins, even though they do a lot of damage with Ashbringer and they are very good, they simply do not scale of weapon damage as well as a warrior. A lot of their abilities are scaling of like attack power or stuff like that. All the stuff on a 200 warrior build in SoD is weapon damage. So we're gonna go to Atosmos, the #1 warrior in the world, and I wanna show you the progression of this guy. As you can see, straight 100, okay, this is the most try-hard warrior in the world. But if we go look at the parses before that, right, like Balnazar is just a random example, you can see right here the progression. It is pretty dramatical. Today's percentage, it means if the parse was logged this week, the parse you would get, because as you guys know, every reset, your parse number is based on all the people on that reset, because as you guys know, as the server goes on and people get more gear, you're competing with more gear, so it's the way they keep it fair. If you get a 100, it means that you're the #1 person in that reset, in that lockout, but a 100 guy from 2 months ago is not a 100 guy today. And you can see right there how he goes from a green parse, it was a purple parse back then, okay, like it was a good parse, but he goes from a green parse and all of a sudden the damage bar, what every warrior is doing, goes up by freaking double. You can see right here, you can very much see right here, okay, he went from 5,700 DPS, which is pretty decent, right, like 6k on Scarlet Enclave, pretty good DPS, and he showed up all the way to 10,600. So Ashbringer essentially doubled his DPS. Okay, that is very interesting. His gear didn't get logged in the first parse. It doesn't show his gear, but of course he didn't have Ashbringer because it was the first time he did the raid, so and you need to do the raid to get Ashbringer, so he didn't have Ashbringer. And in the second parse where he doubles his damage, there you go, corrupted Ashbringer with an item level of 100, which as far as I'm aware, there is not a single item level 100 item in vanilla, right? Like that's a SoD thing entirely. Now, there are quite a few questions you can make about this. Has there ever been, in the history of World of Warcraft, an item so broken that can double your DPS? Because I cannot even think of something close to this, right? Like, could Thunder Fury double the DPS of a rogue? No, it couldn't. Could Dragon Spine Trophy, the most broken trinket in the history of probably the freaking game in TBC, could that double your DPS as a warrior or a hunter? No, it couldn't. Yet somehow, a single weapon took a warrior that was already very good and already fully encased in Naxxrama's gear, and that guy doubled his damage. You can see right there, he got even more gear later on. He got 13,569 DPS total. This is probably the upper limit, what you can get the most out of a warrior right now. I don't think it's gonna go much higher than this. You can see right there, he got 13,569 freaking damage at one point. I don't think there's gonna be much higher than that. And as you can see right here, okay, it is not only that the weapon does a lot of damage, 14% of his damage. And once again, this should be a lot more dramatical because this guy is is a top of the world warrior, right? Atosmos is already doing a lot of damage, so when something is 14% of his damage, that means it's a really big deal. On any other player, it would probably be like 20% of his damage at least, okay? But 14% of his damage is the proc on the Ashbringer. When has there ever been a proc in a weapon that gives you 14% more damage? Maybe the Untamed Blade? Is that it? Maybe? Bone Reverse Edge? Probably. Honestly, because of the armor scaling, you can make that claim. So yeah, it is not the most bonker proc we have ever seen, but it is definitely up there. Okay, look at that. 1928 DPS. So you can say a decent person in SoD Enclave right now is doing like 6k. This freaking weapon proc is as good as like a third of a person. Okay, so if you got 3 guys with Ashbringer, the proc is gonna do the same damage as a person. How stupid is that? Now guys, I am gonna be honest with you. I know it is very easy to poke fun at the balance and think, oh, it is so broken. I think they knew it. Okay, I'm gonna give you the tinfoil hat. I think they knew it. You know, we're in the end game, we're in the last phase of SoD. Blizzard knows that warriors are a bit of a complaining bunch, and like the people that really freaking care about classic are warriors. Most usually, like if you really like vanilla and you are not a warrior, you are what we call a masochist. So I think it makes sense, especially as a way to say goodbye to SoD, right? Because there is not gonna be a future tier. I think they wanted it to feel extremely stupid for the last phase. I think they actually wanted it to feel something ridiculously powerful. The Ashbringer is such an important weapon in the lore, of course, and warriors complained the entire time on SoD, sometimes for good reason, sometimes not so much. I was part of both, and yes, I think they just wanted to give us a little reward. So yes, I think they just wanted us to have a little reward so we can enjoy our last phase of SoD and feel really powerful. So warriors can say warriors were broken in vanilla again. That's 100% what's going on. Now, will this break the game? No, because I think by the time that you got people with Ashbringer pogging, okay, if you get to that point that people are pogging with Ashbringer on them, the raid is gonna be so trivial anyway that I don't think people are gonna tell you, no, you cannot come because you don't have Ashbringer. You know what I find really funny? There is like twice as many heroic strikes and cleaves as there is auto attacks in here. Basically, this thing does so much damage that you can Q cleave and heroic strike on a two-hander. Remember, there is no rage generation on a two-hander if you got heroic strike or cleave, and he can just proc Wind Fury just enough, and he does so much damage basically that every single swing he gets, if you get a Wind Fury proc on this weapon, you get 100 rage every single freaking time. So he can just pretty much keep heroic strike and cleave queued the entire fight and just spamming every global, and he doesn't run out of rage. Keep in mind, two-handers were already better than dual wield, that is not a secret. But apparently, in theory, if you do stupid enough damage that you can get infinite rage, two-handers are even better at scaling than dual wield. It kinda makes sense, but it kinda doesn't. I never thought about that. Now I totally understand why No Hit Jerome spent all this time farming gold for the Ashbringer. Like, yes, it is not as big a deal for a red paladin, but like, if it can double your freaking damage, if you can get 2000 DPS just off the proc of the weapon, yeah, it is probably worth it. Now that you know that though, do you think it is worth doing Scarlet Enclave? Because I heard this comment before that the gear is not worth it, you know, it's barely an upgrade from Nax. They said it was gonna be like 40% more, but if you look at it, this is like 150% more than Nax. It is one of those things that is gonna be a bit of a concern if you're the guy designing Classic Plus, because obviously when you get enough damage, the classes in Vanilla WoW break. Okay, the game was not designed for people to do 10,000 damage. Are they gonna have to rebalance warriors around all of this? Because they said they wanted to do rage normalizing. We're gonna see how that flies in the warrior community. They are not gonna be happy about that. But honestly, if we wanna look at like a reasonable game, they are gonna have to retune the entire classes. And it kinda explains why they had to overtune the raid so much too, because if taking the weapon and some tier pieces is gonna more than double your damage, yeah, as soon as some people in your guild get an Ashbringer, the bosses are just gonna fall over. Is that good design though? Is that good design? Will it matter at that point though? What about the people that quit because it was too hard? I do not envy the job of whoever has to deal with all of this. Subscribe, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.